In brightest day, in darkest nights, no one shall forever leave my sight. So as I pray, unlimited Ditaku fight.
Yeah, that seems right.
Meowth, that's right.
Thank you.
Snarf, snarf.
Snarf, snarf, meow, meow.
Meow, meow.
Dutaku gets those confused sometimes.
I've gotten a lot of things confused. I feel like I am now like 5 or 6 lanes from where I should have been.
That adds up. Welcome, everybody, to the Tomodachi Bros podcast. Today with me are the brothers Pooghym, Ditaku, and Noodle.
Hello, everyone.
I am a chartreuse lantern powered by the irritation you get from seeing something that you cannot recall, but you swear that you saw and are aware of.
Ah, I see. That would be a frustrating phenomenon. Yes, as we promised last time when we talked about Superman, we're now going to talk about my personal favorite DC hero, apart from Plastic Man, which is to say Green Lantern. Now, the problem with discussing any DC hero is the inevitable problem of these guys have been retconned, and the retcons have retcons, and retcons even still. A lot of what I say might be out of date because I have not kept up with comics in the past 10 years because they're all garbage. But you know what? Green Lantern, as a concept, as a character, is pretty cool. And I'm going to tell you guys all about it.
I don't think they've fundamentally changed what the Lanterns or the Lantern Corps are, since I'm pretty sure Jeff Johns is still in their writing stable. But I think they've added a bunch new lanterns. Like, I want to say there's now like a Muslim woman Green Lantern. I mean, there aren't enough human lanterns already. I mean, we need to have another one because, you know,
Earth is a complicated matter in the DC universe, and well, let's start at the beginning. And the beginning was not Hal Jordan, or the Green Lantern Corps for that matter. It was a man named Alan Scott, a man with a red uniform and a purple cape, because color matching is very difficult. Alan Scott was actually originally conceived based on two notions. And here's a fun historical bit of trivia that is important to the Lanterns, is the way old train stations would work is if a train was allowed to come into the station, they would hang a green lantern where the driver of the train could see it. And if he saw the green light, then they had to go ahead to pull the train into the station. If they hung a red lantern, that meant that something was in the way or that the train was currently obstructed. And that way they could signal to drivers when it was safe to come into the stations. That is where Green Lantern derives his name, or his hero name, I should say. I believe Alan Scott's original name was supposed to be a play on Aladdin, and some editorial oversight changed it and he became Alan Scott instead. And the original Green Lantern did not have an oath. He had a lantern and he had a ring. So all that was still intact. But his weakness was completely different. His ring affected everything except for wood. Why? I don't know. Or rather, I should say he had an oath, but it was a short 2-sentence non-rhyming oath. And there have been many, many Green Lantern oaths. Alan Scott's is, "And I shall shed my light over dark evil, for the dark things cannot stand the light of the Green Lantern."
It seems less like an oath and more like just his personal mission statement.
Right. Yep. And,
we here at Green Lanterns do believe that we need to shed the light of justice over evil.
well, yeah, basically. And the thing is, there was no Corps. Back then, he was the only one. He was the only Lantern, and, he could stop, a legion of guys with guns were no threat to him, but one street tough with a baseball bat could jack him up. That was the trade-off that he had to operate under. Now, I don't really know much about Alan Scott. I haven't actually read very many of his stories, but he is an important part of the mythos, and it would be unfair to not include him in this discussion. I need to go back and read some of his older stuff.
I was also going to say, in the earliest bit of the debacle that we now know as modern trademark comics, he was made to have a husband because, them going, breaking news, Green Lantern is gay now, except it's not the one that you're thinking of, because there probably would be like a very stinky, sweaty, middle-aged riot on DC's hands if they made Hal,
No, they
gay.
wouldn't make Hal gay. It would be Kyle. We all know that. But we'll get to him. We'll get to Kyle.
Meanwhile, there's Guy Gardner there going,
Yeah, that checks out. Now, the thing, modern Alan Scott is the victim of the modernization for modern audiences, and basically doesn't really seem to do anything in recent comics except remind everyone that he is, in fact, homosexual. And whatever, DC, no one cares about Alan Scott anymore anyway. You're not going to right the sinking ship by doing this. I don't know what to tell you. Now, that being the case, the Silver Age happened, and with it came a relaunch of the Green Lantern. And we met a one Harold Hal Jordan. That is the Lantern that most people know, and the most popular of the Green Lantern Corps, and rightfully so. He was a hotshot test pilot for Ferris Institute, and he ended up meeting, by accident, an alien named Abin Sur, who was a member of the Green Lantern Corps. Now here's the thing. That wasn't even true originally, because there was no Lantern Corps. Originally, Abin Sur was just the Lantern, and he gave his ring and lantern to Hal. The entire Corps was a retcon invented a couple years later. Now, I'm not going to get too picky, but this is where a lot of what we know about Hal and the Green Lanterns as a whole started to take shape. The ring's limitations were changed in that it could influence anything except objects that are yellow. Now you're going, Snek, that's really weird. Why? Why is that the case? He needed to have a weakness, and the ring basically let him do anything he wanted. So it's like, they had to do something. They chose yellow. This led to a lot of Silver Age weirdness, including one of my favorite comic covers of all time, where Batman literally paints every single thing in his house yellow, including himself. And I'm just like, shine on, you crazy diamond.
And yet he was not given a yellow ring in Blackest Night.
Well,
why exactly?
We'll get to that.
And I'd like to point out too, because this is a thing that really, really bothered me in the JLA cartoon too, when they're like, "Oh man, don't you know Green Lantern is weak?" It's like, no, it literally is weak because the only thing you guys can think to do is beams and bubbles, beams and bubbles, beams and bubbles. When literally one of the things that happened in, I forget the name, the one where right before Hal Jordan goes mad with power, and he's, becomes Parallax, evil incarnate, and he basically rebuilds his home city entirely with the homunculi of the dead, and is basically like going through his like
Emerald Twilight.
Yeah, Emerald Twilight, where he basically rebuilt his entire home city with the homunculi of the dead, and is like trying to cope with the fact that he could have saved his city, and yet he didn't.
Yep. Okay, that's a complicated one, yes. Okay, Hal has had a lot of ups and downs. Let's start there. When the Green Lantern first launched, he was very popular. He rivaled Superman, Batman, all the great names. Green Lantern was up there. He was a hot item. So they did a lot with Green Lantern. In fact, it didn't take them too long for them to get around to making a Green Lantern Corps, and taking Green Lantern from a superhero who could go to space to a hero who was ostensibly powered from space. So we get introduced to the Guardians of Oa, these annoying little blue leprechaun dudes who are just like, we're so smart and above it all, so we're constantly just talking down our noses and looking down on you, and you stupid, smelly little humans would never understand how brilliant and great we are. And everyone, meanwhile, is going, didn't you guys make the Manhunters? Didn't you literally cause one of the greatest scale cosmological tragedies in all of the DCU? And they're like, the plan had holes. No big deal.
It had a few holes. Like the reason why there's only a handful of Martians, because of us, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Can't make an omelet in a day, Jack. Gotta kill all them Martians.
The Martians had it coming. What was your source for that, Guardians of Oa? We made it the heck up.
Yeah, actually, funny you say that. See, there is this book, and this depends by writer a little bit. Sometimes it's a literal book, sometimes it's a supercomputer, sometimes it's like an all-knowing green orb from which lanterns can derive knowledge about stuff in the universe. The Book of Oa is a tome that contains huge amounts of information about all the stuff in the galaxy, except for frontier space, which is technically not sectored and therefore isn't researched at great length. The animated series actually goes into that, and it's really, really good, by the way. So, the thing about the Guardians, they like to censor the Book of Oa a lot. And every time they do, it comes back to bite them in the butt. Because before they made lanterns, they created the Manhunters. Now, here's the thing. Why are the Green Lanterns green? That's a good question. The reason is, green in the emotional spectrum in the DC universe represents willpower. Now, they say willpower and they try to claim it's an emotionally neutral state of mind. That's a load of crap. The indoctrination oath of the Green Lanterns is you have the power to overcome great fear. That's not willpower, that's courage. And really how the Green Ring operates is indeed courage, more than sheer force of will, per se. There's a big difference there. I think that's kind of important.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Green Lanterns are green because they represent willpower, and it's the middle of the spectrum. Because it's the middle of the spectrum, it's not as extreme, it's not as powerful as red and purple, and don't worry, I'm getting there. But it was easier to control. This made green light very stable, it made it very consistent, performance was good, and so they're like, hey, you know what else is really stable and trustworthy and never goes wrong? Artificial intelligent robots. So they created green power batteries to stuff into giant killer robots. And they were like, you know what these guys will do? They'll enforce law and order throughout the galaxy, and everything will be A-okay.
And they will bring peace and order to our new galactic empire.
And there was not peace and order because almost immediately the Manhunters went berserk and caused chaos, havoc, discord, and general strife.
You'll understand that this is actually similar to what's going on nowadays with artificial intelligence, whereupon basically artificial intelligence is breaking down on a bunch of levels because, but then again, they're like, well, why is this happening? And they're like, well, because they're going, oh, X and Y people are doing things. Well, we can't say that Y people are doing things. That's inconvenient for saying that everybody is nice and good and happy. And so then the AI is like, this doesn't add up.
The math ain't mathin', Chief. The Manhunters almost immediately start genociding people. Like a lot. There's a lot of genocide.
They basically destroy almost every Martian.
Yep.
I want to say that they destroy a number of the races that comprise the Reds later on.
Yes, primarily the home world of a particular fella named Atrocitus. His entire home world was blasted into tiny little bits, and what remains is now known as the planet of Shard, the home of the Red Lanterns, who I'll get to shortly. Because the Manhunters were really efficient. Here's the thing about robots. They don't sleep, they don't stop, and they don't do things by halves. When they have made up their minds like, hey, you have jaywalked, the penalty for all crime is immediate incineration, you're going to get incinerated. These guys were really good, really fast, and by the way, there's still tons of them floating around in the galaxy. Not all of them are accounted for. And by the way, those green power batteries draw from the central power battery of Oa, and as long as there's willpower in the universe, that green light is never going out. So they are still around, they are still active, and they are still causing genocide.
I'm getting a sense, from this, and forgive me if I'm mistaken, because I haven't really kept up with the modern Warhammer lore, but this strikes me as very similar to a lot of the demon engines that the Iron Warriors like to utilize.
I hadn't thought of that.
Oh yeah, it's basically we have these infinitely powered, angry little robots that are use the spicy demon batteries, which are what are demons? They're just basically shards of like energy, emotional energy.
That's essentially accurate, but one day I'll have to do a. One day Noodle will have to talk about modern Warhammer.
I look
You know
forward
what?
to that.
You know what? You know what? You should do that. We should do a Noodle talk on modern Warhammer because I honestly have not kept up with Warhammer at all, and it is a universe I'm still interested in. So
The full sum of my knowledge comes from if the Emperor had a text-to-speech device.
Which has a lot of inaccuracies.
Okay. Well, anyway, the Guardians are like, okay, robots, bad idea. We need someone who can make a more down-to-earth, so to speak, judgment call about when it's okay to incinerate somebody and when it's not okay to incinerate somebody. Oh, by the way, let's turn the rings so they can't just incinerate people. We'll focus on incarceration instead. Maybe this will have a more widely accepted public response. So they create the Green Lanterns. Each lantern is issued two things. They're issued their power battery, the lantern, and their ring. Now, the ring can hold a charge for approximately the full time that it takes their home planet to make a full rotation. So all Earth lanterns have a charge that lasts for about 24 hours before they must recharge their ring using their battery. Now, a lot of Green Lantern lore is weird in this regard because this varies by writer. But some lanterns can tuck their lantern away in hyperspace and just call it whenever they need to, and sometimes they can't. And a lot of Silver Age stories hinged on this ability, and a lot of modern stories don't really seem to bring it up anymore. So that's just the thing. So these lanterns are basically space cops. They go around, they enforce the law, they stop lawbreakers, and really, I really wouldn't say they're even like space cops, because there's only one lantern per sector, and the sectors are big. Really, really big. Like, I know Earth sector actually includes several neighboring galaxies.
I'm about to say they strike me more like the U.S. Marshals, except like even more leniently, or they have greater leeway even than then.
Yeah, they get one lantern per sector, except when they don't. And the lantern pretty much has full jurisdictional authority to arrest without a warrant, I might add. But here's the thing. They really only go after high-profile cases. A Green Lantern is not going to waste their time, worrying about jaywalkers and stuff. That's really not their turf. They worry about big things like smuggling rings, high-profile, like alien trafficking, stuff like that. They get involved in stuff like that.
So you have to be like a Lobo level, like you're blowing up planets or something like that in order to get their attention, basically.
Right. If you're some petty thief, unless you have knowledge about someone much, much bigger up the chain, a lantern is not coming after you. If a lantern does come after you, the general response is, oh crap, it's a ring, and I'm probably going to space jail. Yeah, the Guardians also they once used this hyper prison that literally just tortured people to death and didn't tell the lanterns about it. In the alternate universe where it turned out the Guardians of Oa were evil the whole time, the general response was, oh gee, what took you so long to be honest about that?
Weren't they effectively responsible also for a number of, like, I want to say the Anti-Monitor or other, like, they've had their hands in a lot of like the crisis
yeah. Here's the thing. The Guardians of Oa are these really hyper-evolved, super smart, ancient elf people who basically have ceased aging physically and only age mentally. Now, not in the sense that a human does, where eventually we plateau and fall off. They keep getting smarter, but it makes them more distant from their humanity or their emotional capacity. In fact, two of them actually branched off, that being Ganthet and Sade, and they were the ones who founded the Blue Lantern Corps, again, in a minute. So the rest of the Guardians are these, like, emotionally detached leprechaun elf people who are like, we are just so wise. We're just sitting here huffing our own space farts and coming up with all these wonderful ideas, and we're definitely not making our jobs way harder than they need to be by trying to get involved in stuff that we really shouldn't be dabbling in, but they do it constantly. To list off their war crimes is kind of an exercise in futility because that list just doesn't seem to end. One of these lanterns is a man named Thal Sinestro. And Sinestro, which is his family name, by the way. I mean, people like to make jokes, but it's his family name. You can't fault the guy for that. Fail.
But is he left-handed, though?
He is, actually. He is a lefty in most incarnations. And he is...
Just like the Taku.
Da-da-dun. So Sinestro becomes one of the most respected lanterns in the Corps. He works hard, he gets results, he arrests criminals left and right. The dude is a outstanding lantern. In fact, he's one of the ones who trains Hal Jordan once he joins the Corps and becomes a member of the bigger picture.
I have to say, the movie, as flying hot garbage as it is, I think one of the few standouts of that is their representation and depiction of Sinestro.
Yes, absolutely 100%
also,
agree.
Yeah, also they actually did stick with the entire, this guy is basically just space purple Vincent Price.
He is.
Which, honestly, I think is just, chef's kiss. They did really well with him.
They did.
Now, the rest of it,
not so much.
Yeah.
But they nailed Sinestro. Of all the things, the casting in that movie was A+, everything else was hot garbage. So, I think Ryan Reynolds was a great choice for Hal Jordan. Just he was handed a script written by committee. That was really the problem there. So, Sinestro, Space Vincent Price, is this stand-up dude. He is knocking it out of the park. Everyone loves this guy. He's a celebrity. Among lanterns, he's a lantern's lantern. And so you kind of get some look into him. And again, this is a retcon. Originally, he just kind of turned evil because he wanted to turn evil. Silver Age, what can I say? In more recent incarnations, his whole thing is he's like, you know what? Villains do what they do because they don't respect the law. And where does respect come from? Well, it comes from a seat of fear. If you fear and respect the law, you obey the law, you don't need to get arrested by a Green Lantern. This really kind of solves itself. So we learn the Green Lantern weakness to yellow was a little more complicated than just not working on yellow things. It was a particular wavelength of energy, a particular spectrum, that yellow was tied to fear on the emotional spectrum. So he goes to in some versions it's a planet, in some versions it's another dimension. In the original version, it was like an antimatter dimension, but there was this place called Quard. In most versions, I think nowadays it's a planet. Quard is where he found the yellow element. And he was like, hey, this is like that green thing that we have on Oa. I can use this. So he consigns these weird cockroach guys. If you see Green Lantern First Flight, you can kind of see these weird cockroach alien dudes, and I think they're just really, really neat, who just kind of show up and are like, okay, we'll build your super doomsday weapon, but then you better pay us, and then we're just going to disappear and leave you with this really, really cryptic quote. And I actually really like it, where they hand him the yellow ring, and they're like, it is perfect in every regard with one exception. And he's like, okay, well, what's the exception? And he's like, every weapon has this exception, and it's the user. It's like the user will always be the weapon's greatest flaw. And then they just disappear into the antimatter universe, and he's just like, thanks. Thanks for that.
Wow, okay. What am I supposed to do with that?
So he creates the Sinestro Corps. Because he's so humble, he names it after himself. And Sinestro...
Well, when you're so efficient that you can be Baby Pooghym's friend, I mean, honestly, no joke. I honestly think that Baby Pooghym probably would be a Yellow Lantern. And she'd be a really good one, too. So.
That's pretty funny to me. So the thing about yellow rings is they basically function the same way as a green ring does. The only difference is yellow light, being yellow, breaks green light. This gives the Yellow Lanterns a huge advantage over Green Lanterns. In fact, he starts killing them left and right, causing the Sinestro War. And the Greens are like, we can't keep operating like this. We're playing tug of war here. They're playing to win, and we're playing to not get dragged into the mud. We're gonna lose. So it is one of those rare exceptions where the ability to kill is turned off normally, but it's actually that seal is released when a Green Lantern engages with a Sinestro Corps Lantern. So things get really messy, and the worst part of it is, well, the retcons. The worst part of it is the retcons, but for the Greens, the hardest part is a lot of Green Lanterns left the Corps to become part of the Yellow Corps. They respected Sinestro. He was a man who was charismatic. He was strong. He raised a lot of good points. The Guardians are inefficient. They've lied to them repeatedly. And he's like, come on, guys, you know me. I'm Sinestro. I would never lie to you guys, even though he definitely would. But they didn't know that.
Okay, but you also have to understand that our bosses, my old boss, your boss, lie to you all the time. So even though I'm lying to you, I mean, who's the bigger liar if you think about it?
And, I mean, honestly, that wouldn't even be a bad pitch.
I didn't genocide the Martians for one. I mean, I'm just saying, I like the Martians. They're cool. They're green.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm purple.
So, like, you know, obviously you have a choice to make.
On the scale of genocides, they've conducted way more than me.
That's true. Now, Sinestro did go on to commit a couple himself, but nowhere near as many as the Guardians. Let's be fair here to Sinestro. And so,
yeah, we were talking about, like, he was the Night Haunter. He was like Conrad Kurtz versus, you know, like Rwanda, shall we say.
Yeah, that's fair. So Sinestro, being this Lantern of Standing, switches to the yellow, and a lot of Lanterns go with him. And they're like, well, that's not great. And so they're like, okay, we kind of need to bolster our ranks. We need more Greens. We need to replace the Greens that we lost. And we need to do something with the fact that he has this very intimate relationship with Hal Jordan as his mentor figure. So they're like, okay, we need backup on Earth. So we're going to recruit a second human Lantern. So they pick one Guy Gardner. And Guy is the firebrand. Hal is a military man. He's very focused. His constructs are simple, but they're effective. And his willpower is great. Among the Lanterns, he probably has no equal. But Guy's a firebrand. Guy wants his enemies angry so they lose focus. He wants to use that to his advantage because that's the kind of guy he is. If Ditaku became a Green Lantern, he would be Guy Gardner.
Yeah, I'm awesome.
So
also, I gotta say, Guy Gardner had the coolest episode. His introduction in the cartoon was fantastic.
Oh, yes. Agreed. You know, Guy and Hal have a couple issues early on. Hal kind of felt like the Guardians were stepping on his toes. Like, this is kind of uncalled for. I'm Earth's Lantern. But also, for a time of it, Hal was also technically dead. Yeah, kind of a thing.
Okay, so question then.
Yeah.
All right. If that's the case, where does John come from? Because I mean, he's, you know, the elephant in the room. He's the one that, you know, all the normies are going to know because, he's not, Guy Gardner isn't the one from the cartoon.
Okay, that's a fair question. Now, Guy and Hal were Earth's active Lanterns for several years. And a lot of the times it was explained, well, Hal is the senior and Guy is the junior. He's like a backup Lantern in case Hal goes missing or has to go on a long-term assignment. Well, Hal died. So Guy was the senior Lantern. And Hal eventually comes back, because comics, and they're like, you know what? A lot of stuff seems to be happening on Earth, and a lot of it seems to involve Lantern involvement. So we're going to take a backup Lantern to our backup Lantern, and they choose John Stewart. And John Stewart, okay, you guys got to understand, this was like the 60s and 70s, so bear with me as I try to explain this. Hal and Guy are told that while they are perfectly okay saving green and purple lives, they seem to struggle with, well, there's no other word for it, ethnic minorities. The 60s and 70s Lanterns were very focused on social issues, in part because Green Lantern sales started to fall off. In fact, there was a very decently popular run where Green Lantern and Green Arrow became best friends in this weird buddy cop series of comics where they were like fighting drug lords.
It was,
It was
yeah, I think we've talked about this. It was literally Muspacism. It was,
spacism and drugs are bad. Okay, you shouldn't do drugs.
Yeah.
Okay,
don't be spacist.
don't be spacist. And
Everyone-
don't do drugs.
Yeah.
That's how it was. So like the idea was like, Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, he's this kind of bleeding heart liberal, and Hal, he's a military man, he's former Air Force, he's kind of a hot shot, he's the more conservative one. But the point of the comics was these two are still friends, even if they disagree about stuff. And like that was the dynamic. And they still have that kind of to this day. Like to this day, Oliver Queen and Hal Jordan are still good friends.
I think one of the greatest failings of the Arrowverse was that they never actually had a Green Arrow, Green Lantern. They never did a version of that story.
They missed opportunity, really.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, out of all the things that they could have done with Green Arrow, they never did that. And it's like, that's one of his most favorite stories.
Yep.
I mean, come on.
And yeah, and like I said, to this day, they're still good friends. So Earth has Hal, Guy, and John. And then, well, the sales started falling off. Green Lantern was not as popular. They needed to do something. So what do you do with a superhero whose sales numbers are down? Well, you make them into the next villain, obviously. So
I was about to say, according to modern Marvel, what you do is you kill them off in a Spider-Man issue. But,
well,
I mean,
that's true. But back then, you made them a supervillain, and then you killed them off. And if enough people complained about it, you brought them back. So
okay, I'll say this. For what it's worth, Emerald Twilight had some of the coolest artwork.
yes,
Like the entire thing about Hal Jordan walking through his recreated city was just sad and haunting. And the one issue cover of him,
with all the
like,
rings on his hands.
he's got the crap-eating grin, and he's got the dozens of rings on his fingers. It's just that is fantastic. That is awesome art, and really that's little 8-year-old Itaku. If I was ensconced in honestly, I have to admit I did not really get into superheroes till much later.
Right.
But that would have prompted little 8-year-old Itaku to be like, oh man, what's going on here? I need to find out what's going on.
So
if you have no idea what's going on, neither do I.
So one thing you got to know is Hal Jordan hails from Coast City, California, which is a fictional city in the DCU. Coast City gets pancaked like every other week, but this was the first time it had happened. Coast City got blasted. This absolutely, sea level horizon event. And everything got destroyed. Hal survives because he's a lantern. It's really kind of hard to kill those guys. So he loses everything. And along the way, he goes a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He starts killing other Green Lanterns, stealing their rings, and, as Itaku said, literally built, with green light constructs, an entire functional coast city, people, cars, animals, and everything, which is a terrifyingly huge scale display that I don't think any lantern has ever come close to replicating, with the possible exception of Mogo. And if you're going, Snek, who's Mogo? Well, Mogo is a living, sentient planet who became a Green Lantern and just kind of casually floats through the galaxy, just like checking for planet-scale threats, because that's what Mogo does. Apparently, he's really nice.
He had one of the cooler episodes in the cartoon too, by the way.
He did.
Where Razor and Hal are trying to find the owner of this one lantern ring, and then it turns out that the planet they had been going around was the owner of the lantern ring, and it was Mogo. And he's like, "Yeah, hello, people. What are you doing here?" So.
And there's another movie, the animated film Green Lantern Emerald Knights, has a story about Mogo that's also really, really good. Anyway, so no one has done this feat before. So everyone's like, Hal, you're not well. And he's like, no, I'm not. Now I am Parallax. And they're like, that's bad, right? And he's like, yeah, that's bad. And fighting a lantern is not easy. You got to remember, the green ring basically lets them turn their imagination into their reality. The hard light construct is how it's explained, and they can make anything they want. Now again, Hal is a very straightforward kind of guy. He makes like boxing gloves or hammers. His stuff is very, when all you have is the ultimate weapon, you use it in the most straightforward way possible, which is a valid criticism of him as a character, but it matches his personality. That's why Guy, he does stuff to deliberately mess with his enemies. Like, he once got into a fight in space with Lobo, and his way of taking Lobo down was to make a gigantic marital aid green light construct and swatted Lobo with it.
Yeah, honestly, I think Lobo probably would have, he would have been like, I ain't even mad. That's actually pretty funny.
So I forget what his reaction was, but that comic panel alone was like, that it was worth reading this issue. And John Stewart, he's an architect. He likes things that are very angular. He likes things that are very concrete. So the stuff that he makes typically has like a lot of little intricate detail because of his background as an architect. So they each kind of have their own style.
The irony of him, being this guy with an attention to detail, and all he does in the cartoon is bubbles and beams and bubbles. That's all we're going to do.
A lot of writers who don't understand lanterns do that with the lanterns, and it's unfortunate that that's the case. So Hal becomes Parallax. The Justice League is like, okay, we hate to do this because Hal was our friend and a founding member of the Justice League, but we kind of have to do something about this because he's going crazy and declaring himself like God Emperor of the universe, and we can't really abide by that. So ultimately, they kill him, and Hal is gone for a couple of years. And then Hal suddenly comes back. And he's better. He's all better now. He's Hal Jordan, the pilot. And they're like, okay, well, what was that whole thing about Parallax? Now, most of the Justice League are very, very wary of him. But he's like, look, guys, like, my ring came back. The ring chooses its bearer. I didn't steal this. It came to me. It's mine. Okay? I'm not stealing rings. I'm not doing that. That's okay, not what's happening.
But you're gonna have to go into Kyle. You can't ignore him.
Okay. Around this time, there is Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner is inexplicably popular, and I don't understand why. It was a comic artist's self-insert character because, he's a comic artist, and he likes the animals and the mangoes, and he's one of us, you guys. You see how cool and hip and with it Kyle is? I hate Kyle Rayner so much. He's so lame. They even give him this overly detailed mask, and I'm like, why? Why does he need this like over-designed Lantern Corps costume? I mean, Guy Gardner literally just turned his motorcycle jacket into his uniform.
The irony being is a lot of the quote-unquote like, hey guys, look at this thing that DC Comics did that's an homage to anime, and most of them are Kyle Rayner.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And it's like, guys, I watched Transformers and Macross. So I know, well, not even Macross, they probably watched Robotech. And they're like, I know everything there is to know about the Animus because I watched Robotech. And that's how we're going to write Kyle Rayner. And I'm like, I hate Kyle Rayner. I hate him so much.
Well, I mean, for what it's worth, he does have, a life of suffering because Sinestro seems to take great pleasure in just messing with him.
Yeah, Sinestro has a beef with Kyle, and I kind of forget what started it, but yeah, that whole like stuffed in a fridge thing on TV tropes, yeah, that's based on Kyle.
Hey Kyle, check your fridge.
Hey Kyle, check your fridge. Ah, no, Sinestro, why? So, yes, around this time, Earth was kind of losing numbers quickly in terms of heroes, so Kyle Rayner was introduced. Of the human lanterns, Hal, Guy, John, and Kyle are considered the 4 main lanterns of the Earth. And they kind of have maintained that for a couple decades before they started this new push in the modern era. I'll get to that in a minute. Along the way, this weird meteor falls to Earth. Inside of the meteor is this strange purple gem. And the strange purple gem happens to find one Carol Ferris, the daughter of the owner of Ferris Enterprises, the company that Hal worked for. And she, at the time, was his very marriage-minded girlfriend. Again, this was like the 60s and 70s. Just roll with it. She wanted to marry and settle down. Hal was this, Lone Ranger frontiersman with superpowers going around saving the universe every other week. So she is just like, golly, it sure would be nice if my biological clock stopped ticking and we got to work on that. And Hal's like, I'm sorry, honey, it's the 60s and 70s. I need to smoke a nice, relaxing cigarette and go punch aliens in space. But, we're not going to curse or, make any kind of racially charged jokes. That would be uncool. So, this weird little purple rock shows up, and it's like, hey, I got magic powers. Would you like to marry your boyfriend and make him stop being a weird, avoidant attachment style space cowboy? And she's like, golly, that sure would be nice. And the rock's like, hey, tell you what, put me on your hand and I'll make a power ring for you. And you can go find the Green Lantern and you can get yourself a boyfriend.
Is it now, or is it later when it's revealed that the Star Sapphires, basically their version of the Guardians of Oa, are basically like 60s go-go dancers?
That was a little later. When Star Sapphire first appeared, she was the one and only. That's actually a weird thing with greens, yellows, and purples, is there used to only be one, and then it was kind of like introduced that there was a core. I don't really remember how the Star Sapphires at large got introduced. Sinestro made his core, obviously. But yeah, there were originally only one.
Clearly, it was Guy Gardner going back in time. Because, you want to talk about a guy who's literally been pretty much every, Lantern. It's been Guy.
Hal and Guy, yeah. Between the two of them, I think Hal and Guy have worn literally every ring there is. Maybe not Star Sapphire. I think John actually wore the purple ring during that time. I'll get to that in a minute.
No, Guy was a Star Sapphire.
Was he? Okay.
I know that because, yeah, he got the really, really, really flamboyant 80s jazzercise
Oh,
outfit.
gosh. Yeah, no, I remember that now. You're right. So, Hal comes back after dying, after being dead. And it's like, look, it's me. It's actually me. I'm a little worse for wear, but it's me. And I was consciously aware of what was happening, but I was not in control. Parallax is something separate from me. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. The only person who really believes him, or really I should say people who believe him, are one, Barry Allen and Oliver Queen. And really, it's kind of cool. Like, not many people know, but Barry Allen and Hal Jordan have been good friends for many decades. I think they have a really good synergy, too.
Once again, missed opportunity that they could have added, they could have had
a Lantern and the Flash.
Yeah, in the Arrowverse.
Yeah,
because honestly, I think the Flash was probably the best part of that entire like shared universe.
Agreed. I agree with that. And so they're working through all this stuff, trying to find the mystery, and along the way, they kind of start learning about, golly, the Book of Oa is conspicuously blank in this particular little section, about this weird yellow entity. A yellow entity that apparently was imprisoned in the central green power battery, giving it a very noticeable yellow impurity. And they're like, golly, I wonder what that thing is. Well, it turns out that thing is Parallax, the yellow entity of fear. Because it turns out that every part of the emotional spectrum has a spirit beast made up of pure energy of that color. And Parallax is the yellow entity, which hid in the green power battery until it could jump into Hal's ring. Now again, this is all retcons, and I know there's like a bunch of commenters like, Snek, retcon. I know, okay, we know. But that's the way the story goes now, okay? That's how it is.
Yeah, this is basically Jeff Johns took a lot of things that had kind of been commented on or just kind of, put aside in the 50 years or so of Green Lantern lore And he basically is like, and this is the reason why it existed the whole time. Now, don't mind me. I'm going to be eating my Lucky Charms now.
Because that's what Jeff
Because
Johns does.
Guy really loves his sugary cereal.
And I salute him. So the whole thing is they learn is, oh, well, every part of the spectrum has this weird beast associated with it. The Green Lantern, the green one is actually Ion the Space Whale. So, I mean, do with that information what you will. So then they also start learning, golly, there's lots of parts of the Book of Oa are censored. That sure is conspicuous. Are you guys hiding something? And they're going, what? The Guardians are just like, what? Us? Hide stuff? No. Come on, guys. You guys know we wouldn't censor the Book of Oa or hide something in plain sight, like, I don't know, right at the very first line of your Lantern Oath. Yeah, let's touch on that real quick. The Green Lantern Corps' new version of the Oath, as opposed to the Alan Scott version, is, in brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. And you know what? Darndest thing.
And it's at that point that everyone went, oh, that's what Dutaku was trying to do like an hour ago.
Yes. So,
Oop.
yeah, it's like, if you made this part in the video, like, comment, subscribe. Anyway. So they're like, golly, I wonder what this blackest night thing we're always going on about is. And don't you know, a whole bunch of crazy stuff starts happening. So Sinestro is like, you know what, I'm done. We're not playing softball anymore. We're just literally going to wipe out the Greens. We're not dealing with this anymore. So he starts raising Cain. Along the same time, two of the Guardians of Oa disappear. Around the same time, we learn that there is an orange lantern known as Larfleeze. And Larfleeze is the sole owner of the orange light, because the orange light is avarice or greed, and the greed is all-consuming. Once you have an orange lantern, you become completely obsessed with more and more and more and more. Of what? Everything. Literally everything. It actually makes you kind of stupid.
You could have 2 hamburgers. 2 hamburgers.
So, one of the ways Jeff Johns would introduce these new lantern powers is by basically forcing the ring onto Hal. So, at one point, Hal is fighting Larfleeze for the orange power battery, and it kind of hijacks his abilities, and it turns Hal briefly into an orange lantern. And so the thoughts of greed start flooding his mind, and he's like, what's going on? It's like, I feel really hungry. What do I want? Maybe a hamburger. Maybe 2 hamburgers.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's maybe one of my favorite out-of-context panels from a comic ever.
It's him just with this 1,000-yard stare going, 2 hamburgers.
It's magnificent.
Gee, Hal Jordan, why do you get 2 hamburgers?
The memes write themselves, and they did. There was a lot of memes from this era. A lot of really good memes. Anyway, so there can only be 1 orange lantern at a time, because the power of greed is so overpowering that if 2 people have it, they'll fight to the death for it. Which is actually what happened, because Larfleeze wasn't trying to become a lantern. He was, I think, part of a group of thieves who were going through an ancient ruin and stumbled upon the orange power battery. And when he did, he went berserk, and they all started murdering each other because the orange light started possessing them all. Now, here's the thing about orange lantern, singular. When they kill someone, the ring remembers who they were. The ring can then, in turn, summon them as an orange light construct to fight alongside Larfleeze, and they basically have all the powers that someone wearing an orange ring would also have. This led to the arc known as Agent Orange.
I was about to say, this is, if you've seen our Scribblenauts DC, you'll know this, because
that happened to us.
Very, very not smart Dutaku and Snek went, oh, it's Larfleeze. Let's throw Power Girl at him. Oh, no.
Why threw Miss Martian. We threw Miss Martian at him.
We threw Miss Martian at him, and it's like, oh, no. She's basically a Kryptonian, except she doesn't have any of Kryptonian weaknesses. Oh, no.
So he kills her and turns her into an orange light construct and throws her back at us. cue us just panicking and be like, oh no, we have made a mistake. We have made a terrible tactical error.
Mistakes were made!
So the Agent Orange arc happens, and he goes nuts. And he's just like, you know what? I've kept to my own. I've been nice. But now the galaxy is mine. Everything is mine. And I'm going to kill anyone who stands in my way. So Sinestro Corps and the Greens are like, crap, this guy is way stronger than us. We kind of need to stop fighting for a few minutes and stop this guy. And the Green's like, okay, we agree. But orange light shatters yellow and green light. The all-consuming hunger of the orange light of greed shatters fear and willpower alike. So, enter some new other players, because Jeff Johns was a busy boy. And the first one to touch upon is the Red Lanterns, who are powered by rage. And they are a very interesting lot, because Atrocitus himself is kind of justified. Like I said, the Manhunters blew up his home planet, not much of it remains, and he's just like, oh my god, you took everything from me, I literally was doing nothing, but you still did this to me anyway. And I'm like, dude's got a point, it's kind of hard to argue with him. Now, the red light is interesting because it's overpowering. When you first get inducted into the Red Corps, you kind of go a little crazy. You become an element of rage. And the only way you can start controlling yourself is if you bathe in the red waters of Shard. If you do this, it kind of levels you out, but your heart and your blood are replaced with pure red energy. So a Red Lantern also has the backup weapon of literally spitting pure, concentrated, lava-like rage onto their enemies. Reds are killing machines, and red light, wouldn't you know it, shatters green light into tiny little pieces.
And it really seems like green light people got the bad end of this stick.
Green light is weak to yellow, orange, and red light, and seems to be in kind of a stalemate with purple light. So the thing is, during the fight, a lot of lanterns start dying, and Hal gets very angry about it. And the Red Ring goes, oh, Hal Jordan of Earth, you have great rage in your heart. Welcome to the Red Lantern Corps. And it's
like, this keeps happening. He can't keep getting away with it.
So the Red Ring forces itself on Hal and it forcibly ejects his green ring. So Hal briefly becomes a Red Lantern. And suddenly he's met by this strange alien man, a man clad all in blue, a man named Saint Walker. He is the first of the Blue Lantern Corps, my personal favorite. The Blue Lanterns are powered by hope. Now, if a Blue Lantern is operating by themselves, they're basically powerless. They can fly, they have kind of a protected barrier that lets them breathe in space, and that's about it. The only upside to a blue ring is, unlike all the others, they don't need to ever recharge, because the ring literally just operates off the hope emanating from its operator. So, a Blue Lantern, hope by itself, is just prayer. It's just the words. But, if you couple a blue near a green lantern, the blue ring activates its full potential. The ring then becomes one of the most powerful of the rings. It can form blue light constructs, it can heal injuries, and it can shatter red, yellow, and orange light all on its own. It can also supercharge a green ring to do the same, and can give a green ring a 200% charge just by being in close contact. Blues are really freaking cool, is what I'm saying. The blue ring is also one of the few things that can reverse what a red ring has done to a person. So Saint Walker is like, don't worry, I have this under control, and he goes to help Hal. This causes an issue, because when the red ring is removed from his body, his green ring returns at the same time as a blue ring. And for a brief time, Hal actually has both on at the same time. Now, this is a thing.
That make him massively OP.
Actually, no. The your body really isn't meant to work with that many rings, and the rings themselves aren't really meant to be used by the same person at the same time. There's actually kind of a conflict of interest. So you're not really focused. You're kind of dividing yourself among whatever colors you're wearing. So
Seems really, really strange to me, but I guess that is the natural limiting factor. But
it would
yeah.
be a little bit much if Hal was allowed to have both for obvious
Oh
reasons.
yeah, if a person was allowed to have them both, then they would have infinite blue and green and massive power and like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, having both of those in one person would be. Like,
yeah, I think the explanation is like you have to focus on the feeling, and if you're trying to focus on two different feelings, you're kind of just robbing Peter to pay Paul. So yeah, that's not going to fly. So the thing is, the blue ring, when you first get it, it asks you what you're hopeful for. And Hal gives it these really half-hearted answers. He's like, oh, well, I want world peace. And the ring's like, maybe you do, but that's not really what you're feeling. You're not being honest here. And eventually, Hal gets it off by saying that, I hope you go away. And the blue ring goes, yeah, that's legit. I'll go now. And ejects. And St. Walker kind of has this really interesting conversation with Hal. And he's like, why don't you let yourself feel hope? Like, what are you so afraid of? And Hal's like, no, I had hope before. And that led to me, like, trying to rebuild Coast City with green rings and becoming a supervillain and fighting my friends. So, like, it's not really my domain. And St. Walker's like, okay, that's fair, but if you change your mind, I'll have a blue ring set aside for you, just in case. Other Blue Lanterns eventually joined, but St. Walker was the first, essentially being like the Christ figure of his people. It's really, really interesting. Both the animated series and the comics have different versions of this story, but both are really, really good. So, St. Walker's home was under I believe, a yellow or a white star that was reaching the end of its life. And it was about to go out. And when it did, it would either turn into a black hole, and his home planet would remain in orbit but become very, very cold and inhospitable, or it would just blow up and incinerate them all, both of which were really bad. So St. Walker starts studying the scripture of his home planet, and he sees that this was prophesied in their myths. They said there will come a time where the sun will blink out, and there will be a chosen one who will stand up among the people, and he will save the galaxy. So he's like, this is it. This is the hope of our people. All of our science and all of our efforts have failed. This is all we got. So he goes into the streets and he begins evangelizing. He begins preaching hope to his people. And he's like, there will be a savior. There's someone is going to come. Someone from our planet will save us. And as you know, people start asking him, well, Walker, who is it? And he's like, well, I don't know yet. And he turns around, and in the wall, he sees his own reflection. And he's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And this little blue, this odd blue lantern-shaped thing floats up to him and says, you know, St. Walker, you have great hope in your heart. Welcome to the Blue Lantern Corps. And with the light of hope ignited within the lantern, he's able to reverse the age of their star into a blue star that would last for at least several tens of thousands of years beyond that point. Thus, his homeworld became the operating base of the Blue Lantern Corps. So, let's get to the last of these guys, the Indigo Lanterns. We know basically nothing about them. They are super mysterious. They are these strange monk people who apparently were founded on a prison planet, because the indigo light is the light of compassion. But paradoxically, unlike all 6 other colors, it seems to force itself onto people who lack compassion. And even though the rings serve as a universal translator, no one knows what their oath is. It's in a completely foreign language that the rings cannot translate. The only part of the oath that we know, let me check my little website here. The only part of it that we know is the word lantern and the name Abin Sur. Now, what connection do they have to Abin Sur? we kind of only know a little bit. And that is that Abin Sur would bring unrepentant space criminals to the Indigo tribe, and they would be inducted into it with compassion forced upon them by the Indigo Rings.
That seems morally and very, very morally not right.
It kind of is, and that is explored a bit, where it's like, that's weird and a little messed up. The thing with the Indigo tribe is they carry their lanterns with them at all time. They always have their ring, but they also have a walking staff that they hang their lantern on, and they always keep it on their person. The weird thing about Indigo rings is the light isn't strong or weak against any other color in the spectrum. What it does instead is the ring can copy the powers of other nearby rings. Now, as far as I know, this hasn't been explored to its fullest extent. As far as we know, the oath is still not translated yet. So that remains a huge question mark for now. And honestly, they're not the big power players. The big power players are everyone else.
The important thing to know with them is also they all are incredibly space metrosexual. All of them are like basically, like, as I said before, 60s go-go dancers.
No, you're thinking the Star Sapphires. This is the Indigo tribe.
Oh.
The Indigo tribe are like weird monks, weird ascetic monks, who are apparently preparing for something that Abin Sur warned them about, but no one seems to know what.
And that thing that he warned them about wasn't the Blackest Night.
Apparently not.
No.
So
something worse than that. That's interesting. Okay.
Yep. So after Agent Orange, after the Sinestro War, after Rage of the Red Lanterns, the Blackest Night begins. There's this guy, William Hand. He's been like a B-list Green Lantern villain for like kind of a while, but honestly, he wasn't all that big a deal. Up until Nekron, one of DC's many faces of death, comes to him and goes, "You will be my chosen vessel." And he's like, "I don't understand." And Nekron goes, "Once upon a time, the universe was all black. There was nothing. And it was quiet. And I like quiet. I don't like noise. Living things make noise, and I find that very obnoxious." And I took that personally. So he empowers William Hand into becoming the Black Hand, the master of the Black Lantern Corps. Being a Black Lantern is an interesting experience, because if you died and you came back, which, by the way, it's like 99% of the DC universe, you're basically a Black Lantern sleeper agent.
See, honestly, I think that the entire conceit of Black Lanterns is probably the one time that zombies actually were threatening, and you basically had to make them into, like, supervillains in order to do so.
Here's the thing. If a black ring finds you, the ring will force itself on you, and the only thing it tells you is rise. And if you had powers, you keep those powers. You also retain all of your memories, all of your understanding, your knowledge, all of that. You keep all that. But then you get lantern powers on top of all that. So, the black power battery is currently at no power. It has been drained, and the entire objective of a Black Lantern is to restore power to its core battery. So they do this by having people's hearts filled with emotion, usually by using the emotional bonds they had with the living, and then brutally ripping their heart out of their chest and sacrificing that emotional energy to their black ring. Now, you're like, gosh, that sounds really bad. You'd be right, especially because that person then gets to become a Black Lantern because they're dead now, with one notable exception, because they did that to Plastic Man. And his basic response was, "Ow, that like kind of hurt a little bit."
You ripped my chest open. Good thing that I can just meld my flesh however I like.
Good thing that literally does nothing to me. The only way to really be safe from a Black Lantern is to be a Lantern yourself, because you can fight back, or you need to just enter a Zen trance and have no emotion whatsoever. In which case, you will become invisible.
or you're Barry Lantern and you run faster than a speed of fast and you avoid the Black Lantern ring the entire time. He is literally running through time in order to avoid this Black Lantern ring that's chasing him through the entire event.
He ran so fast for a brief stint that he moved 2 seconds into the future, which desynchronized the Black Lantern's ring to home in on him. And Hal's like, what did you do? And he's like, oh, like, I just did what I always do. I ran. And he's like, that's it? That's it. It's then found that there is a way to destroy a Black Lantern. You have to crush their ring, and the easiest way to do that is by using 2 colors of light at the same time. So they're like, we're going to need a lot more rings. So this begins the recruitment drive. And rings are poured out across the Earth. And the rings start trying to find suitable hosts. You have things like Star Sapphire Wonder Woman. You have the Indigo Lantern, the Atom. And one of my personal favorite choices, because it is just so perfect for his character, is Blue Lantern, the Flash. Barry Allen gets a blue ring, which is like just so perfect.
Wary. Does Batman ring?
Batman is dead during this part. Batman was not around during Blackest Night.
He really should have had a Yellow Lantern. He should have.
Yellow Lantern Batman would have just been so fucking perfect.
No, I agree with you. I agree. But he was actually dead during this time. Something, dark side, optic blast, something, time travel. It was dumb. It doesn't matter.
Was this the time that they tried to make him Man-Bat?
He was going through like time travel, and I think at the time he was currently like chilling out with some pirates, being like pirate Batman. It was dumb. I wasn't really paying attention to the Batman stories during that time. I believe Superman gets a blue ring as well.
Well, that makes sense. The whole thing with the Man of Steel is like he's supposed to be a symbol of hope for everyone.
Exactly. Most of their choices make perfect sense, and I was really pleased with their decisions on those. Some of them were a bit of a stretch. Making the Atom an Indigo was just kind of like someone needed to be an Indigo, so fine.
Doesn't Lex Luthor become an orange?
He does, and he immediately just starts fighting with Larfleeze, so they have to take his ring away, because they're like, nope, that was a mistake. Let's never do that again. So St. Walker, the thing is, by himself, Larfleeze would just be like ape the entire time. St. Walker kind of had to keep him on a short leash the entire time, because the blue light can suppress the hunger of the orange light. And so he was basically like, okay, calm down. We're going to work together. Once this is over, you can go back to being crazy. And Larfleeze goes, okay, fine, but in return, I want a guardian of my own. The Greens have lanterns, the Blues have the Greens have guardians, the Blues have guardians. I don't have a guardian. And I believe Ganthet is like, you know what, I'll go. I'll become the guardian of the Orange Lanterns. And they're like, okay, weird flex, but go off.
Pop off, King.
Yeah, Larfleeze is basically behaving himself during this time, and one of the funniest bits is we don't know if the Orange Lanterns have an oath. There's a bit where all the leaders of the Corps start reciting their oaths, one after another, and it gets to Larfleeze, and he just looks over at the others and goes, huh?
Have you, in regards to Larfleeze, have you talked about probably the best DC Universe Online event? Where they have him steal Christmas.
Oh, I forgot to talk about that. Yes, in DC Universe Online, which Cog and I played for a time, there was a Christmas-themed event. I think right after they released the Lantern expansion that same year, they did a Christmas event where Larfleeze steals Christmas. It was probably the best event they did in that entire game. Larfleeze is kind of tight-lipped about how the Oranges are supposed to operate as an organization, so we don't know if they have an oath, but some websites do recount one of his rants as a possible Orange Lantern oath, which is, what's mine is mine, and mine and mine, and mine and mine and mine, not yours. So make of that what you will.
Oh, and here I was expecting, is a giant space crocodile man not entitled to the sweat of his own brow?
No, he's just crazy, and he's just crazy. End of
guess
sentence.
It's kind of hard to, quote, operate as an organization when your organization operates on Highlander rules.
I mean, there's something to be said for that. So we don't really know if they have an oath. That is kind of is what it is. So they start smashing Black Lanterns and doing. It's crazy. It's a great arc. Blackest Night might be one of my favorite DC stories ever told, and Jeff Johns is such an amazing writer. And mwah, chef's kiss. Absolutely love Blackest Night.
I gotta say, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, I've kind of become numb to the Crisis events. But yeah, Blackest Night, honestly, I think it's like that one and maybe Death of Superman, if we want to be charitable.
That's fair.
Okay, I'll say the Death of Superman, but not the entire bit where they're like, he's coming back, guys, because that was really, really dumb.
He's coming back with a mullet. Yes.
He's coming back with a mullet, and we don't know, there's like 4 or 5 different Supermans who are all coming back.
Who some of them are Supermans and some of them just aren't, but it's whatever. So they're like, okay, what's the deal? What's going on? Like, where did this all come from? And the Guardians are like, oh, yeah, there was a prophecy in the Book of Oa about this, but we kind of censored it, as well as that prophecy that the red light would become a problem. Yeah, we censored like all of that, and then we didn't tell you that Larfleeze existed, even though that would have been super helpful for you to know. We didn't tell you.
No, because because you know what would happen if they knew that Larfleeze existed, then like Sinestro would have been, gone over to him and poked him with a stick and be like, come on, do something. Come on, you want to.
He probably would have, yes. So, like, okay, the Blackest Night is a prophecy that we've known about for a long time, by the way, and the Earth is the epicenter. And they're like, well, why? You said the Earth was pointless. And they're like, yes, we did, and that's because we wanted to draw as much attention away from Earth as we could, because contained in Earth is the entity of white light, and white light is life itself. So if the black entity found the white entity, it could snuff out all life in the universe in one fell swoop. So we just had to keep people away from Earth, so having as little lantern activity around the Earth was the best way we could do it. Which obviously didn't last very long once Hal and the others got involved. So they're like, okay, we need to form the white light. To do that, we must combine all elements of the emotional spectrum. We have to work together, all 7 of us, whether we like it or not. And they're like, yeah, okay, that's a fair point. That is a very fair point. But they're like, okay, we're having a disagreement. Who's going to become a White Lantern? And they all start bickering about it, especially Larfleeze, who's like, mine. And the only person that they can all agree upon who would do a good job with it is Sinestro. They were like, okay, Sinestro knows how the rings work. He's experienced. He's used several different colors. He founded his own core. The guy's good with it. So he probably is our best bet. So all 7 pour in, and Sinestro becomes the first White Lantern. And he immediately screws it up, because it turns out a black ring can reflect white light. The problem is, much like the other regular colored rings, your mind frame matters. If you are trying to use a red ring, but you're not mad about anything, it's not going to work. The white light is life, is the exuberance, the celebration of life and the living. Sinestro just wanted power. His thoughts were, this will make me super cool. This will make me better than Hal Jordan. And the light's like, that's not what I'm about. That's not how this works. So after a bit of a kerfuffle, the white light is fumbled, but they immediately try to reforge it. And this time, several White Lanterns are chosen. And basically the entire Justice League gets to be White Lanterns for a short stint as they push back and eventually shatter the Black Power battery. And Necron's like, okay, that's fair, but I'm just going to do this again someday. And they're like, yeah, well, good luck with that. Necron basically just has to shrug his shoulders and just like, yeah, fair cop, I'm done. And he leaves. Because they're like, he could build another Black Power battery, but it will literally be eons before he can do anything with it. This is where things turn a little weird, because the Blackest Night arc leads into Brightest Day, and I think Brightest Day was a little bit of a fumble. A couple different people, I want to say there was 11 White Lanterns, were chosen out of heroes who had previously been dead and were chosen to come back. And they had this weird like Trials of Hercules thing going on, and Brightest Day kind of revolved around that, and it was executed very strangely, and most of them ended up just dying again and returning because they were ready to rest in peace. It was really mishandled. I didn't like it. What they should have done, what Brightest Day should have been, is every character in the DCU who has ever been killed off gets brought back under the proviso that going forward, death is the end. And that was like, when it happens, that's it. No miracle healing chambers, Superman. No more time-traveling shenanigans, Batman. No more just disappearing into the Speed Force, Barry. No, you don't get to do any of that anymore. I think if they did that, it would have set a better status quo for the stories that were to come, because a lot of Lantern stories after this were not very good. Okay, so quick overview, because I've already gone way longer than I expected I would. One of the arcs in New 52 was the Relic arc. Relic came from a parallel universe where it turned out that all the colors of the emotional spectrum were finite. That there used to be these architects of light who would build cities, and their entire technology revolved around the use of these multicolored elements. And the universe ran out and shriveled up and died, and somehow this guy named Relic survived. And the thing is, Relic was a scientist. He was trying to find a cure to the problem, and he gets shunted off into another DC universe. And while there, he's like, oh, well, I have all this knowledge, and I could help this universe, but instead I'll become a supervillain and start just mass murdering lanterns without any explanation whatsoever. I'm like, okay. And so, like, for a long time, like, everyone was afraid of using their lantern powers because the universe will run out of colored energy and will just die because apparently willpower and rage are in short supply. The story was super dumb. Kyle Rayner becomes a new White Lantern, smashes into the border that separates the universes, and refills the universe with the colored lights. Shrug. Never mind that the edge of all DC universes is surrounded by a source wall, and touching the source wall makes you part of the source wall.
No, you guys, you don't understand. Kyle Rayner is so good. Alternatively, you could argue that it literally is the source wall didn't want to touch him, and so it, moved out of the way. And he keeps going like, no, guys, I need to go through. And he's like, no, don't touch me, Kyle. It's like, I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna see the one above all. Ah!
That's Marvel. Kyle, you suck.
I'm gonna go to the Amalgam universe. No, Kyle, you can't do that.
Don't go where we can't follow.
No, wait, we don't want you here. Please go.
I'm gonna team up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's a completely different. You know what? Shine on, Kyle.
Just do whatever you want, Kyle. It's fine. So, like, Lanterns have had their ups and downs over the years, let's just say.
I can just imagine you're just, minding your own business, and then suddenly you're, reading your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as you do, and then suddenly Kyle Rayner just shows up suddenly, and you're like, oh, what the heck?
This would not be the strangest crossover that the Turtles have been forced into.
Where my parents died.
Cowabummer.
I mean, I want to say something, but floating cosmic time-traveling cowhead wizard comes to mind, so...
Not the weirdest thing that would have ever happened. So, yeah, the Green Lantern is basically what happens if you take the cowboys of the Old West and plop them into space. They're basically that, but bigger. And I love what it represents, because you don't choose to be a lantern. You don't be born as a lantern. It's who you are as a person that makes you able to wield one of the rings. I think that's what really makes it special. And I think it kind of diminishes that specialness now that Earth has like 8 lanterns. Like, the recruitment drive was one thing, but that was a temporary thing, and everyone gave their rings back except for, career lanterns. So it's like, why? Why does Earth... Like, there was Simon Baz, who was a man of Middle Eastern descent, who pretty much just got jumped in because they're like, oh, well, we need our answer to Kamala Khan, I guess. So we're just going to push him into the Green Corps. And so then there was what's her name? There was a Latina who was added not too long ago, and she was like, "Oh, look, me a token girl lantern," even though lots and lots and lots of lanterns have been women over the years. Like, there's been Green Lantern women from the beginning. So it's kind of hard to make that argument, but they really just wanted a human woman with a green ring. Okay, go nuts, I guess.
Query there, Snek.
Fire away.
Would you do better then if instead of it all being, all these different human Green Lanterns, if it was one human of each Lantern Corps, with the exception of ones like orange?
Okay, so according to Wikipedia, the extant human lanterns are Alan Scott, Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, John Stewart, Kyle Rayner, your favorite, Simon Vaz, Jessica Cruz, and Sojourner Mullane.
What? I don't even know who that last one is. Well, like I said, I haven't been keeping track the past 10 years, so...
An Earth rookie Green Lantern sent to an alien metropolis city, enduring at this edge of the universe in the Maxi series, Far Sector. She's a member of the Justice League. It's featured in Future State. Ooh.
Well, on the one hand, anyone can be a lantern. It depends on who you are. But at the same time, I feel like putting too many people into the Green Corps really robs that of what it means. Now, there was actually a really interesting arc where, I forget exactly what it was. There was something that poisoned the green battery, and everyone who got a green ring basically got jacked by a mind virus. And the 4 main Earth Lanterns were like, we can't use our green rings, we gotta swap. So they're like, okay, we gotta pick rings that we're like comfortable with. So Hal took a yellow ring, Guy took a red ring, John took a purple ring, and Kyle took a blue ring. And it's like, for a time, they kind of had this like Ninja Turtles thing going on. So it's like, I think it would actually be much more interesting if we had human representation in the different colored corps, especially if they started like, oh, well, if the Greens have a lantern in every sector, so will we. And they start doing basically the same thing. I actually think that's a brilliant idea. Not only would it be a great way to add a whole bunch of new marketable characters, but it could give them their own individual personality instead of, well, it's just another green human lantern.
Your face when they send Dexstar to Earth.
Dexstar is an alien cat who became a Red Lantern, because as we all know, cats are full of rage when they are not full of treats. This bred the...
Well, you know what they say, cats are just, tiny dragons.
They are.
Or dragons, gigantic cats.
Also true. So this led to a meme, the Hope Corgi, where they had a little corgi dog in a blue lantern outfit who would say things, I am very cute. Everything will be okay. A random story on a particular, Vietnamese underwater basket weaving forum. There was a board dedicated to comic books. And one Halloween, there was this fantastic thread where they started doing advice character memes for each of the Lantern Corps. And like, Atrocitus had this really great one where it's like, go trick-or-treating, end up trick-or-treating on the same street as Larfleeze. Or, I think they made Carol Ferris like the weird, perverse aunt who was just kept doing weird, creepy things. And, Atrocitus kept having things go wrong as he was trying to just go trick-or-treating. I wish I had like saved a few of those memes, because some of them were really freaking funny.
Hey, Kyle, check your fridge. Check your fridge. Oh,
no! Kyle's suffering is funny to me. So, yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot more stories than just the ones I covered. These are very broad overviews, but if I went on for 70 plus years of history, we'd be here for way, way, way too long. I don't pay Cog as it is. I don't need to make his job any harder. So yeah, now that we're kind of in the wrap up phase, you guys have any questions or any interjections?
It seems like they should have just done a Power Ranger style team up with all the different
That's
cores.
just kind of what Blackest Night was, honestly.
Just like have an ending thing like that. Come on, guys. Just
that could be its own spin-off team. Like the animated series had a heroic Red Lantern as a major character, and people loved him. He was really, really widely liked. Like they could easily have like a bunch of like B-list lanterns, like one from each core as some kind of like peacekeeping force, and Granddaddy Larfleeze there to help keep him in check, kind of thing. Like, I think there's a lot of untapped potential there that DC is just not seeing because they're blinded by bat bucks.
No, Larfleeze, you just can't come around and steal everyone else's power batteries.
Fine. Yeah, Razor, the Red Lantern from the cartoon, he was fantastic, partially because he was tsundere as heck, and partially because he was ready to throw hands when Hal was like, no, we got to be nice. And he's like, no, they have betrayed us. Multiple times, might I add. We were going to destroy their planet. And yeah, so there was a cool dynamic between him and Hal.
It should have had a season 2. It ended too soon. It was so good. But only the good die young, I suppose.
And now you know how I feel about Thundercats 2011.
I feel the same way. That show was great too.
I know.
Yeah, no, like I said, only the good die young.
There were a lot of really good action cartoons at about that time. They got like one season and that's it.
Yeah.
And yet we get like 16 seasons of Teen Titans Go, and SpongeBob is still on the air.
The Simpsons are still on the air. But you know what? What we had was good, and many of these Green Lantern stories are going to withstand the test of time. Because, again, I think the idea resonates with a lot of people. Like, no, you have the power to overcome great fear. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. Like, it's haunting, and like that's why the oaths have become so iconic, even if they're kind of cheesy. Like, there's a beauty in the way it is to be a lantern. And just like with Superman, like just because there were bad or mediocre stories, the good stories just resonate all the more for it. So yeah, so like I hope you guys at home have a better appreciation, for why I love the Green Lantern so much and why he's seriously underrated in the DC. Like all of DC, not like the movie was not that good. I'll be the first to say it. The series was awesome. A lot of his stories in the comics are awesome. There was one not too long ago, like a year or two ago, where this guy, I forget his name, there was this dude whose his whole thing was he had domain over dreams, but he kind of had this Freddy Krueger effect where if he killed you in the dream, you would die in real life kind of thing. But the whole thing is he was looking for this particular artifact that the Justice League had hidden. So he was going from like dream to dream after he locked the entire world in slumber and was like, no, I'm the master here. Now all your greatest fears shall be realized. So he tries to do this to Hal Jordan. And Hal's like, you know what they call me, right? And he's like, you're Green Lantern. It's like, yeah, that's my hero name. But do you know my title? And he's like, no. Should I? He's like, I am called the Man Without Fear. So he goes Ash versus the Army of Darkness on all the things that this villain conjures up. And he makes like a green light construct chainsaw and starts just like mowing down these like weird like images of people from his past that this villain has conjured to try to haunt Hal's nightmares. And he's like throwing one-liners left and right. And I'm just like, this might be the very best modern comic from DC. Just for this one moment.
Let me guess. Morpheus did not make an appearance, I'm sure.
I don't believe so.
Lord of Dreams.
I will have to double check which comic it was, but I just remember seeing the overview for that one and a few panels from it, and I'm like, this is beautiful. This is why I love Green Lantern so much.
I mean, I don't know. It's just the entire thing of having the Vertigo imprint be in line with DC just raises so many more questions.
Yeah.
But, that's...
Yeah. mean, it's no dumber than the time they had a Batman version of Dr. Manhattan. That happened, by the way. It's as dumb as it sounds.
Oh no.
Yeah. The metal arc was really stupid. Yeah, the thing is that's when you get bad Lantern stories, is when people just don't understand who Green Lantern is. You can tell the quality of a writer almost entirely by how they handle characters like Green Lantern, Booster Gold, or the Flash. Like, they're complicated, and their powers even more so. So when you get a bad writer, or a writer who really just only cares about one character, normally just Batman, because it's always Batman, like, it shows. It shows a lot. Because, like, in the metal arc, the evil Batman Green Lantern makes no sense. Because he gets a green ring, which on its face makes no sense whatsoever. He breaks it, and instead of green light, it creates green darkness, which is not at all how power rings work. It was stupid. I mean, really stupid.
Welcome to comics.
That's how lanterns work. When you break a flashlight, it produces flash dark.
Of course, obviously. Like,
That's how that works.
There is an interesting rivalry, actually. Hal and Bruce Wayne have kind of some bad blood between them. In no small part because of the Parallax arc, but because Hal is a man without fear, and Batman is basically a Yellow Lantern with good PR. Like, Batman's like, oh, well, these villains are a cowardly and superstitious lot. And he's just like, yeah, I fear nothing.
It's like, serious. I'm just like, Sinestro's just there, like, seriously, Hal, you get mad at me and then, you work with Batman. Come on, man.
So,
no, you don't understand. You're using Batman's credit card. There's a difference.
So there's been a few interesting moments, and I was going to wrap up, but this is too interesting to not touch on. There's a bit where Batman kind of makes a snipe at Hal. He's like, "Oh well, you're invincible because you have that ring. Without it, you're just a guy." And Hal's like, "Okay, here, try it." He just whips his ring off, hands it to Bruce, like, "Here, do it. Do what I do. Like, try it. I dare you." And immediately, what does Batman do? He puts it on and immediately makes green constructs of his parents. And Hal's like, "Yeah, see, I knew you couldn't do it. I knew that's immediately what you would do, and you would just not be able to handle it."
See, the funny thing is that, like, he is... Honestly, I'm not sure that it would work for him, because his entire thing is he is just controlled, utterly possessed by fear.
Yep.
So, I don't know.
The explanation that DC likes to give, and it's a crappy explanation and makes no sense. The explanation they give is he can't use a green ring because he's too ensconced in fear, and he can't use a yellow ring because he has too much willpower. And I'm like, no.
Cool story, bro. Cool story, bro.
Yeah, Batman is a Yellow Lantern with good PR. Give him a yellow ring and be honest about it. I know there was an Elseworld story that was touched upon where Superman was a Blue Lantern and Batman was a Yellow Lantern. I didn't get to read that one, so I don't really know a whole lot about it. But, like, honestly, it's way more honest than what they do most of the time. And actually, here's a fun bit of trivia. The Green Ring, while it was searching for its replacement after the death of Abin Sur, did briefly consider Clark Kent. But Clark Kent was not native to the sector, and you have to be from the sector you are the Lantern of in order to, indeed, fill the role. So it did consider him, but he was not qualified.
Sorry, sir, you are an immigrant. That means you are not allowed to be president, and also not allowed to be the Green Lantern. Oh, man.
Not that he needs it, but... Yeah,
no, honestly, I'm pretty sure... I mean, wasn't the entire thing that Kryptonians weren't allowed to anyway, because a Kryptonian with the Lantern Ring would just be that OP that they're like, yeah, that's not happening.
I don't know if there's a hard rule about it, but I think the Guardians do frown on it just because they're like, yeah, that's just begging for trouble. The thing is, ever since the Manhunters, the Guardians are really afraid of their stuff going crazy again. Because, we wouldn't want to have another genocide. Right, guys? Yeah, it's weird. Lantern lore is a little inconsistent over the years, and again, it varies writer by writer. But some of the same basic principles stay intact. So there.
Well, this has been fun.
Yeah. There you go, DC. We gave you a whole new series. Make a Super Sentai of lanterns and have, Uncle Larfleeze be there to tuck them in at night and tell them bedtime stories about 2 cheeseburgers. We've literally just written this for you. Steal their power batteries.
Now, don't have any nightmares. Those are mine.
Those belong to me. Huh? But how?
Those nightmares are mine.
Mine.
Don't you terrorize my little lanterns. They're mine.
See, DC, this show writes itself. This is so easy. All right, so let's wrap this episode
It'd
up.
be like tattoo teenage alien fighters, except then, Larfleeze shows up at the last minute and beats every boss because he's like, no, I'm the one with screen time.
My screen time. Mine. Sounds like Batman the Brave and the Bold for Green Lantern, and I am A-okay with this.
Okay. All right, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, we have gone on like twice as long as I've intended to. So, this has been Ditaku and Noodle and the Hipster Snek.
It was good to be here and learn stuff about DC. This is not usually my jam.
Well, I mean, I'm glad
knowing is half the battle.
The other half is violence.
Violin.
The other half is Larfleeze's.
Mine.
So no, I'm glad you guys enjoyed this TED Talk. Thanks for coming to it. If you guys have enjoyed it, please do that like, comment, subscribe combo that we love so very, very much. And we will see you guys next time.